Welcome. And we'll start, of course, with our bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And thank you for joining us.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. So, of course, on Sundays, we do Genesis, and that's what we're going to take a look at. And almost finished with chapter 2. So, coming along. So we were talking about the creation of Adam and Eve and the creation of Eve as a suitable partner to Adam. Vayu shnehem arumim, and the Torah comments that the two of them were naked. And we should, yeah, I guess that's where we're going to keep it. Arumim, Adam ve'ishto, the man and his wife, velo yitboshashu, and they had no sense of shame. They were not ashamed of being naked. And as I think I may have mentioned, I had a professor, Dr. Hanan Brichto, when I was at HUC in Cincinnati, and took this course with him on Genesis, and he pointed out the distinction between nude and naked. So here's the idea, is that they felt that, they were nude. That's how we should really translate this. They were nude because naked has the sense of being exposed, and they did not have that sense. And clearly, the Torah is referring to awareness of sexuality, because that's the basis of these particular senses, is the awareness of one's sexual nature that causes one to be ashamed of exposing one's private parts, and why there's even a sense of privacy about those parts. And clearly other animals do not have that sense. It does not appear that they do, but human beings do. But at this point, they didn't. At this point, they didn't. Okay, here we go.
And some still don't.
Yes, consciously, but I think they make, well, and of course it's also a development, because when the child is very, very young, little children don't have that sense either. It develops as in puberty. V'lo yitboshashu, shelo hayu yodim derech tzneut, because this is at least how Rashi understands this. They did not know a way of modesty. Lahavchin bein tov lara. And so this is how he's connecting the eitz da'at tov ra, to be able to distinguish between good and bad. Okay. So they were not, this is the idea of the sense of being ashamed is, of course, a bad feeling, and they were not conscious of it. For afalpi, so this is interesting. Even though shenitna bo da'at, that even though a man had the knowledge, the krut shemut, in order to call these various animals names, or that he was able to distinguish, make a distinction to call things names, lo natan bo yetzer hara. He did not have the evil inclination, And that evil inclination is that element inside every human being. That is, I think that it might be translatable into what Freud called the id. And
But
yeah, go ahead.
didn't have whatever that is. Why then did he disobey God's order and eat of the tree?
Right. Well, the eating of the tree does have some, when we get to that and we can try and analyze it, we can see to what degree it had anything to do with sexuality. Okay. It is a good question you're asking, Lauren, because it gets into the very heart of this transition, and the question of, since maybe even the question of evil, that human beings are capable of doing evil, and that's of course a very basic question, especially when it's contrasted to belief in a God that is all good. And if God is in fact the one ultimate controlling power in the universe, then where does evil fit in? So,
Well, I mean, he may not have known the difference, but he still already had, the potential to do evil in him if he, chose to directly disobey God.
so
He
again,
wouldn't know that.
okay, so remember here, the way they tried to get around it is that Eve was essentially seduced. Remember, it was Eve who was seduced by the serpent. And I guess maybe we can get a better answer to your question as we look at that particular narrative, which of course is coming up right away.
But
Uh,
they had the potential to be seduced even before they ate.
that was, well, basically, who are the people who are most capable of being seduced? Ask yourself.
Was the
Human
was the
beings.
servant the
Well, no, no, no,
evil?
no, no.
Evil?
I don't know.
The
Okay,
innocent,
correct. Exactly,
right?
Golden.
The unknowing, the innocent,
Naive,
the
and the
yes, one who
naive,
has no
the naive.
capacity to inquire,
I
Right,
sort
don't
of.
know.
right. Yeah,
I-
seduction tends to, when it's seduction as per se, it's got to do with someone who's innocent and
Or
naive.
weak,
Yeah, well, being naive and innocent in that
maybe.
sense is a weakness, can be a
Well,
weakness in the face of seduction.
How
maybe
about childlike?
Yeah, yeah,
weak. I
yeah.
would say weak, but I wouldn't say necessarily
I,
innocent.
yeah, I don't know. I don't want to debate that at this point, and I think Harlan wanted to say something, so I want to let him share what he wanted to say. Harlan, what were
Well,
you?
I was going to say that they ate the tree of knowledge because the snake was the evil person. Now, how did the snake become evil?
Right, exactly. So, yeah, eventually you're going to come down to that question. And I believe in the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, he points out the fact that ultimately you have to say God wanted it. That
Oh,
you
okay.
cannot escape it. That and there are even within Jewish midrashic traditions, an issue as to whether or not this is something God wanted. Okay,
We
Well, I
have
mean,
to get out of the garden.
you can't be good without having a choice of being good.
right. David, I know you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, I guess I wanted to ask, kind of thinking about this, is are is evil inherent in us because God wanted us to evolve? I mean, without evil, without evil, and then conquer evil, and going over that cycle over and over again, is that also a part of our evolution, spiritually? So, in other words, if it just left it the way it was, was that really the plan, or was the plan all along that we would be introduced to evil or have it inherently in us, and then have to conquer it over and over again in order to evolve spiritually in order to achieve immortality? I guess that's my question.
I think that as I understand you, yes, I would have to say yes. I would say that without evil, life becomes purposeless.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It
And
would be great. I mean, if we're all still in the Garden of Eden without any issues. But yeah, yeah, that's okay. All right, thank you.
right. So yes, it does. The whole we will discuss some other issues. There was another point that Dr. Brichto brought out in terms of reacting to this as to saying that this is in some ways the story of every single human being. That
There was not a single moment where seduction was not fallen for. I mean, the very first attempt to seduce, it was all over.
I'm not sure.
Nobody resisted. Neither Eve nor Adam resisted.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Eve is never accused of seducing Adam, just wanting to share it with him and wanted to share, and whether or not her
Maybe that
motivation.
wasn't her intention, but it's still, since he knew that it was forbidden, and he, took it from her, that it may not have
Yeah,
been her stated intention, doesn't mean it wasn't a seduction.
but the fruit was so good to eat. That's why she shared it with him. It was so
And the
good.
knowledge that
I
she
give
got
him-
from it.
Yeah, so of course we're anticipating a lot right now, and it might be helpful to get through this rush at least, right? And be able to
See
move
what
Yeah.
quickly
Rashi
to the
says.
to the twig.
Go ahead, Rabbi.
Yeah. Okay. Look, hopefully this is sort of a foretaste of what will be, I hope, some really cool discussion coming up. All right. So yeah, but to David's point, yes, that part of the very purpose of living is that battle that we have, that challenge that we have to overcome our evil inclination, and it actually gives us purpose because the of course the consequences are very great. There are huge consequences to it. So the reward is great. Sadly, the reverse is not so good either. Okay, it's pretty awful. Okay, so v'nichnas bo yetzer hara v'yada ma ben tov rara, and so he understood. At that point, he understood the difference. In other words, he had some sense of knowledge of that what he was doing wasn't good. So of course we have this struggle between our impulses and our better judgment. And that this is what happened when they ate from the tree. So okay, on to the next chapter. Vahanachash. So now we have, and notice by the way, the play of words. Vahanachash haya arum. Look at that. Here, they were arumim, right? And we use the same word arum, right? And arum in this case has a different meaning of sort of sly, cunning, some in that sense. Mikol chayat hasadeh, from all the other beasts of the field. Asher asa Hashem Elokim. And look at that. I mean, it says, which the Lord God had made. So the snake, of course, was one of God's creations.
What is the connection between nude and sly?
Good question, right? I don't know that I can answer that question well right now. It's something to meditate on, right? Um, on the one hand, we have this idea of being arum, nakedness, and is there a sense of boldness that goes along with that nakedness, right? And that
Not if it's an innocent nakedness, because
correct,
like a
right?
child, or
Of
that's
course.
not necessarily boldness.
I understand. I'm not saying
Innocence.
it's necessarily. I'm just saying, is there some connection? That's all I'm saying. And whether we're saying that the snake had that boldness, that
David
impertinence.
has an idea.
Yeah, yeah. I know, I see. Yes, thanks.
Yeah,
David?
yeah. So I was going to say that if it's not an innocent, I think it's confidence, right? Because someone that who can, stand naked without that kind of embarrassment. So, confidence, slyness, to me, that's what would kind of go together there, right? Is you have that level, of yeah, I guess, yeah, confidence or whatever you want to call it, that you can pull that off and not be intimidated by it.
So
That's my point.
so it just occurred to me from what you just said that maybe the word chutzpahdik would be a good translation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
I don't
That's
know.
it.
I'm just throwing it out. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
the word con does come from confidence.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if those words confident and are related, because there's but you gain somebody's confidence,
Right.
and when you're sly,
Mhm.
and
Right. And that person is
also,
called a confidence man, right? A confidence
yeah,
person.
that's what I said. The word con
Right,
is
right.
that's where
Oh,
it comes
okay.
from.
I see. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
thought you were on in a different sense. Yeah, exactly. To
No,
con.
so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to be like, you're really stating things out. You're out there. It's kind of like you're not disguising what you're doing. It's just that you're gaining their confidence, and you're kind of pulling them along to the point where they're going to say yes.
And the
It's
idea
not like,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the idea of trickery, right? that idea of trickery. And we'll see in the snake, he's absolutely trying to trick Eve. And the I think we need to go into the text. There's just so much stuff to be said about it. So I think at least we have to base it on the text itself. But I'm glad we're finding this, interesting and stimulating. So let's keep going. Okay, we got to finish the verse first, right? Vayomer el haisha, and he said to the woman, Af ki amar Elohim lo tochlu. This, is, I think the way this is to be translated is, okay, is it true? Is it true that, or did in fact God say, you shall not eat from any tree of the garden? And the idea here, by the way, is why did the snake, because there's so many questions we could ask about these passages here. Why did the snake choose Eve? Why didn't he choose Adam? And the answer is that it was easier to draw the woman into a conversation than it would have been possibly to draw Adam into the conversation. And that he's intended, the snake knew, okay, that he was saying something that she would react to because he's saying a falsehood, and you'll see how she reacts to it. So part of the trickery was to say something to Eve that he knew that the snake knew she would know was false, and feel then motivated to respond to the snake. So it's the very conversation itself that gets her into trouble. The fact that she's willing to engage in this conversation, but it's drawn in, right? I mean, it's shaded. A lot of this is shaded, right? But that's at least the understanding as to why it's Eve whom he picked. Yeah, David.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay. Okay.
I'm laughing really hard.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
I said I'm laughing really hard because the
Yeah.
snake picked Eve because he knew Eve would engage in the conversation versus Adam, who wouldn't.
Right.
And then normal anyway.
Right.
Okay.
And if you're not happy with that, okay. I'm not saying these are
No,
great.
no, it's
That's okay. Lauren,
yeah, but
happy with that answer? Or
yeah, I guess my point was the difference, difference between men and women, and I'm going to get shot in this conversation. But anyway, that made me laugh very much. So anyway, now I will go back and then I'll take the arrows in the chat room. All right.
Yeah, men may be reluctant to talk, but they're not reluctant to correct and mansplain.
Yeah, okay.
True.
I'm not going to argue with you.
Very good, Lauren. Very good, Lauren. So I think for those who
I told you.
Yeah. Okay, no, it's not a problem.
But it may be because the snake was male, and that if
Yes.
Eve had heterosexual tendencies, she may have been flattered and charmed by being addressed.
Okay, so let me go to another explanation, which is, I think, to deal with what the point that you're making, Lauren, is that, that explanation is not a compelling answer by any means, but that the snake was jealous of Adam and that the snake actually wanted to have intercourse with Eve. Look,
And that would
okay, so the other piece also is the snake clearly is a phallic symbol. It's a phallic symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another reason why it's the serpent. Okay.
And
so
why Eve would be tempted.
correct, exactly. Okay. So just all these things combined to do this. But let's take a look at what Rashi on this. Okay. But it's so interesting, right? How it shifts the transition from ending chapter 2 with mentioning how they were naked, but they were unashamed, okay, meaning they didn't feel exposed. And then it moves right into this issue of sexuality, okay? V'hanachash haya arum, right? So he says, let's take a look. So this Nachash, this serpent was arum. Ma inyan ze lakan. Okay, so why in fact does this whole little story come in here? What's its place here? Haya lo lismoch vayas la'adam uleishto kotnot or. It could have just gone on to say, could have left out this whole story and said, what's the natural look at this? It talks about them being exposed, right? Or arumim. And then it goes on, and Rashi's pointing, saying that it would have made sense then for the Torah to go on with the saying that God made them skin clothing, clothing of hides. Here they are unashamed, but they don't have clothing, and here God made them clothing. That's how it could have gone. Haya lo lismoch bayas la'adam v'lishto. This is the verse, right? Because later on it's going to say it. God made for man and his wife, right, his woman, kotnot or vayal bishem. He made them garments of skin, and he clothed them. So why is this coming in here? Ella lemamedcha, but to teach you, me'ezo siba kafatz anachash alehem. For what reason did the snake jump on them? Why did he go do what he did? Ra'a otam arumim. So this is interesting, okay? Interesting, because Dr. Brichto's explanation would not explain this, but this is a key element in the Rashi. Ra'a otam arumim. He saw that they were naked or nude, ve'oskim betashmish, and they were engaged in sex. The ein kol in the presence of everyone. Venita la, and he desired her. The serpent desired her. Now, there are some problems with this particular interpretation, although Rashi, you can guarantee, is basing it on what he has read and what he has learned in the traditional interpretations, right? Because the question is, at this point, why would they be engaging in sex if sex essentially is the way in which we procreate? And so Dr. Brichto's point is that at this point they were not engaged in sex, but that's the way in which, of course, the tradition tries to understand the snake's motivations.
Well,
So
I don't understand why they wouldn't be engaged in procreate in sex. They may not know about procreation,
okay,
but they're naked. They're
wonderful,
attracted to each other. They're innocent of what all of this means.
right?
Why wouldn't they?
Okay, so the reason they
They
wouldn't is,
don't have a sense of morals, and
okay, let's deal with that. Good
consequences.
question. Great question. So the answer is, how long was the human going to live for?
Well, how would they know?
It wasn't a question
They
of
were
what
immortal at that
they were
point.
immortal at this
They're
point.
immortal.
The whole point of
Okay.
procreation is it comes to answer the
But they
question.
don't know all that.
It
They're
doesn't
just,
that
they have
doesn't
body parts and they see each other.
it doesn't matter.
But
From
children also think they're immortal.
yeah, and everyone thinks, not only don't realize, but here, whether they realize
Why
it or
would they
not.
even understand the concept of mortality versus immortality?
Well, they were told that there was the tree the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It doesn't mention. I think what we have to do is to take a look at this from the divine plan point of view. In other words, what is the problem if people procreate and live forever? What happens?
And the world is overpopulated.
Correct, and it won't be sustainable. So here, that's the point. So at this point, this is Brichto's point, is that it doesn't make sense to say that they were in fact procreating if they were going to live forever. And this,
Because that means they would already have knowledge of good and bad, or that they would already have done something very bad.
no, I think it's
I
just
mean, I don't understand.
the issue is,
Is it really good and evil?
again,
It's knowledge, it's
But they
sex,
don't have a
it's
concept of
how
any
life
of this, I don't
works.
think.
okay, what I'm
I
trying to
don't,
I mean, do the animals procreate at this point?
no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't procreate either. I don't think.
Nothing's procreating until
Correct.
they eat from the tree.
Correct. And it talks about how they gave from the tree of knowledge of good and evil to all the animals as well. We are looking at this. I think the point, Lauren, is that we're looking at this from the divine perspective, not from the human perspective, not whether they were aware of it or not, but in terms of trying to understand a divine plan involved here. So
well,
whether or
maybe before the tree they were allowed to have sex without procreation.
not that is
Maybe it was just
that's true.
physical activity that didn't involve,
Understood. And
procreation.
that is a possibility. At least clearly Rashi is holding on to that. Rashi was
Everything was
open,
different before the fall.
right. So let's
I have a note here where it says you can either be immortal or fertile.
yes,
Those are
exactly.
your choices.
Those are the choices, right.
I
So
think it might have been from the last time or whatever, but I jotted that down.
So they could have been infertile and engaging in sexual activity.
that is all possible. Yes. That is what Rashi is holding, Lauren. That is the position Rashi is holding. That they were engaging in sexual activity, but they were not procreating. And that's why, and that is an explanation as to why the serpent picked on Eve, that he desired her after he saw the two of them engaging in sexual activity. Okay. So that's supporting your position. There's a position that says, it doesn't say this, right? The text itself doesn't say it. It's a way of interpreting it. Okay. And Brichta chose to not interpret it that way. Okay. So he has not got perhaps as good a reason as to why the serpent picked on Eve. But we just have to consider the various possibilities here. It's complex. Arum Mikol, right? So here we go.
I have a question though. So just okay, I guess at this point, is the serpent, okay, later on, of course, we get the laws which say what that it's forbidden to have these relations with animals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or non-humans. But I guess the question is, at this point, I'm assuming that doesn't apply. Otherwise, the serpent wouldn't have been able to, or shouldn't have been able to try to seduce Eve. Is that right? That that
Yeah.
doesn't really apply at this point, or yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we actually do have this tradition that prior to the creation of Eve, Adam actually did have sexual relations with the animals.
Okay, so not okay. So got it. Okay, so back. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then why wouldn't he with Eve?
Correct. Again.
Okay, that even more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lauren, you're absolutely right. And that's the consistency of where Rashi is. Okay. Again, is it stated explicitly in the text that he did this? No, it is
No.
not. So it is, you decide what interpretation you feel makes more sense. Okay. Essentially, it's going to lead, I think, to the same ending, but regardless, it's a different interpretation. So I want to look up, we come to this word arum. Oh, okay. We're going to take a look. I guess we'll have to wait until next week to take a look at this word arum. Rashi is going to go into that. And so I'm going to stop the share for today and stop the recording and see that my Rosh is clearly, my head is not on straight. And we'll stop the recording here and take a look more carefully next week.